Welcome to Mercedes and the Chap, a show dedicated to helping humans become extraordinary. Here we will hone a well-rounded roadmap for us to step into our potential in all things relationships, work, purpose, and legacy.
Yes. And without further ado, what are we going to get into today?
I don't know. Let's see.
I know.
You do?
I do.
Okay.
Okay, so
I'm scared.
like me, most of the reasons we tuned in, and you don't have this capability, but I had this magical device. It's called a computer. But actually what it does, now you have that capability, but what it actually does is it sees into the final cut of this show, and I'm watching it with you. So I probably will. But no, this is what it's about. Most of us tuned in to watch Mercedes and hear what she has to say. I mean, let's just be honest at this point. Because normally I'm not. But I want to know. Remember, and just so if you haven't figured this out yet, I'm hoping to become somewhat of an avatar for the guy at home. So I'm really trying to think of like what can I ask that might be interesting to know. So this one is how what is that? Okay, what that's me. Why now? I'm like a little cat okay, so the thing is what is it like to date Mercedes Terrell? That's what it's like. And we're going to roll with this for a bit. It's going to be a little longer episode, but I want to know, I'm a guy.
Yeah.
And I want to know what it's like to date Mercedes Terrell and all its glory and tragedy.
Probably a lot less fun than it looks on TV, I'll tell you.
Yeah?
Yeah, because, I mean, first of all, imagine the amount of work that you would have to endure in relationship with me. I mean, like, if just what I put out to the public world is like asking people to do their own work, imagine being in relationship with me with the intensity of that. Like, how many therapists do we see in a week is the question.
Where's your funding coming from for all these therapy sessions?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to use any that are going to be insured, on the insurance plan.
Not.
No.
Yeah, it's never going to work that way.
No. Right. So maybe it gets expensive, but I believe that work is what leads you to having all the abundance you want anyway.
Right.
So that's maybe like the first.
Okay, so have a war chest of money to pay for psychologists.
Or just know that what you invest into your relationship and into yourself will always pay itself back, and have faith in that.
Well, that's true. Yes, of course, that's true.
Tenfold, at least.
That is work that you do yourself. But I guess what I'm wondering is so I am your date or your significant other in terms of I'm dating you, and what
and to be clear, we are not dating.
No, we're not. Yes, we're not. But
hypothetically,
just whoever I'm at, I step into the shoes of whoever you're dating. What would I be experience? I don't mean like, the obvious, but I mean like, what would I experience in terms of the emotional things?
Let me ask you, like, what are you afraid of if you're a guy and you're like, oh, it might be interesting to date Mercedes. What are your initial? First of all, why do you think a guy would come and think that? First of all, besides like looks or something like that, what do you think are the initial attractions? And then right after that, if you took that serious and you really tried to, slide in the DMs or something, do you even approach the idea that this might come with some other things that are not as fun as?
Well, I think that goes back to, you have to understand yourself what steps you would take to get to the mission, and then you would look back and be like, wait, do I even want to do this?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think if it was, somebody like me, there are certainly some positive attributes to you that is from a dating standpoint. I mean, there's plenty of, but from a dating standpoint, I like obviously attractiveness, intelligence, you're funny, you're active, but the problems that are more obvious to me is that the world that you operate in is surrounded by a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
And some of these guys are very intimidating. And I don't mean just in terms of physically intimidating, in terms of good looks or fighting ability or, whatever they
physically intimidating.
But also, but also in terms of like mentally intimidating, that you might be hanging out with, astrophysicists or like
Yeah.
high quality like neurologists or studs like me.
You never know.
You never know, but not really. But the problem is how, and then not to mention that, but all the traveling, and this isn't just what is it like to date Mercedes Terrell, but it's like, again, you can be also interpreted as a placeholder for, I really like this actor, or I really like this singer, or I like this, news anchor, and I would really like, but the reality is, what do you really like about it?
Right.
And the fact is that even really them,
Yeah.
for starters?
And I think I'm probably really good at putting my true self online and out there for the public. So they maybe know me better than some might know a random celebrity that you might, draw out of a hat. But I think there's also, it's always like what we do in relationship, whether you're thinking about dating someone with any kind of following or fame or, someone on TV or something like that, or the regular Joe Schmo down the street, the same thing is happening. You're basically projecting what you hope that person turns out to be onto them until you learn who they actually are, or until you allow yourself to see who they actually are. And so I think when it comes to dating, I don't know, me or someone like me, whatever that means, it's just a question of, are you willing to put up with the things that you can see right off the bat that are very obvious, that you aren't creating assumption around or creating a fantasy around or any of those things. So for me, I think one of the hardest places for men who have dated me has always been if they're a jealous type, or if they're insecure with something about themselves that is in direct competition to, I don't know, some men that might come into my sphere because of the work I do. It probably is going to be a bit of a struggle, but it's also, no one's confident about everything all the time. Like, it's literally impossible. So I take responsibility for making my partner or person I'm dating comfortable enough, to what I believe is reasonable with security in the relationship or in dating me or whatever. And I'm very, I think, clear and concise. I don't think anyone ever gets the wrong idea about me. Like, I don't have people who go, I didn't know she wasn't trying to date me, or she, it's never a question there. So it's like I have a lot of, I'd say, intellectually and spiritually intimate relationships with men. And that can be very uncomfortable for a lot of people, because people believe that when you cheat on someone, it not necessarily even has to be physical, but it can be emotionally intimate, and like emotional intimacy that is cheating. And to me, I think we're all soulmates in waiting, essentially. And so connecting with as many humans as I can on that level, I think, is super critical and important. That's the work I do on OnlyFans especially. And if you're uncomfortable with that, it's something you really have to look at in yourself. Like, if you're a man and you're coming to a woman who has very intimate relationships with men that aren't necessarily physical, but everything else, can that man also hold intimate relationships with other females and feel okay? Like, this is going to not, I'm going to fall over the tipping point here and end up in bed with this person because I can't control myself. That's a problem in your own control. And I don't think I have any worry about my lack of control. I actually am a control freak on the other side of it, to a fault. Like, it's definitely my hardest sticking point in myself. So I think I'm good at making someone in relationship with me feel comfortable and confident in the fact that I am with them, and that's not questionable. Yeah. But it still takes, they got to meet me there still.
Well, and what you see obviously on either TV or in movies or on social media, the other thing, the thing is like, you're a little bit different, or maybe a lot different, in that you do show some kind of behind the scenes of Mercedes, or more are authentic, and we do get your humor and fun, but there's a lot of, what you're seeing, not of you, but also including you, of just good looks and, sex appeal. And it's like
the majority of what I think people take from whatever their interaction with me is.
And, I remember this line, and I didn't come up with this, and I don't know who did, and I'd love to credit this person, but I don't know who came up with it. And the thing or it's anonymous, but it's like somewhere somebody's tired of her shit.
Yeah, or actually my girlfriend said this the other day because I was having some complaint about relationship or that, and she was like, actually I was feeling really unwanted in my partnership. And at the time, and by the way, this happens pretty much every month and I can kind of calculate it according to my menstrual cycle, but she said, wow, every, what did she say? There's a point where whoever's dating any supermodel, like there's some saying about supermodels, like someone's sick of dating that supermodel, even though you have projected this whole idea of like what she's going to be or whatever it's going to look like. And someone is sick of sleeping with her.
Like somebody's tired of her. And for whatever reason,
right,
for whatever reason they are. And I think that, and it's also the same mindset a little bit, and then I want to get back to you specifically, but it's also the same mindset of, you enter in a new relationship with somebody and everything's amazing, everything's great. The problem is like, that's their best foot forward and that's your best foot forward. And that's like, you're firing on all cylinders. You had the coffee, you slept well that night before, you are A game plus. But the reality is that only lasts for so long before you're actually going to be in a situation where you're stressful. And like
sure,
there's
real
shit
saying, comes out.
Yeah, they're
like
always saying
life.
is like a good true test of a marriage. This is not real, but it's like the true test of a marriage is, can you handle a move to a new place together?
Yeah.
Because that's annoying. And these little things, I mean, luckily I've dealt with a bunch of moves with my significant other.
And that's minor. That's like if you're already a privileged person and you live in a country that has freedoms and you have a roof over your head in the first place and you have food on your plate. Like imagine if you're living from a much more primal state, like I don't know, some might in a third world country or some people that live here in America, who are coming from a place of literally just trying to feed their family or survive today or feed themselves or whatever. Relationship isn't even really a question. Like we're very privileged to even have the conversation around it.
Oh, for sure. Because we have the luxury to do so based on the stability that we're in. Yeah. Now, the interesting thing about you is let me ask you this, I'm going to just ask you a couple things that I know, and then we're going to get, deeper and deeper, and then we'll extract some good information out of it as we try to do. But let me ask this. If I'm a jealous person, and there's always jealousy. There's different degrees of it. I mean, you know if you're pretty jealous. You also know if you're probably not jealous. But the problem is all the gray area in between.
Yeah. And jealousy, and I feel like jealousy and insecurity come very hand in hand. And I would say I am more on the scale of jealous and insecure, which is funny because I wouldn't probably date myself. Because if I could know that I was going to date someone who had who is going to look out for me in the way that I feel like I look out for whoever my partner is, and who's going to express their loyalty in that way. But I can't secure that. So for me, it's like a statistics game. Like that is probably not going to be very comfortable for me. It's going to be mostly in that state of like jealousy or feeling like, oh God, that they can leave me at any time, or whatever the spiral of thoughts that would happen for me. So that's why I haven't dated anyone. I've worked in all these atmospheres with MMA for so long, with Supercross, and with all these different places. I was around professional athletes and just men in general that are like some of the cream of the crop or whatever. And I don't want to date any of those people. They have too much like access, and that for me, and maybe it's a security issue for me, which definitely I do work on, because even in my relationship, which isn't with a celebrity type, I still need to work on those, parts of myself that are about building confidence and making myself more of a secure individual on my own, rather than being codependent or, anxiously attached or something like that.
Well, yeah, and I think, and I don't know, but maybe this is why the idea of the girl next door is so attractive, is because she's all of that, but she doesn't have all the negatives associated with her. And what's interesting is those women are out there in spades. I mean, they're out there, and for every one, I'm going to pick on you. For every one Mercedes Terrell, there are maybe, 100 girls that are just as beautiful, just as this, just as that. Not to diminish, because we're buddies, but I'm just saying, like, they're out there. They have their own.
Yes.
And that, I feel like,
we get that script of like, there's no good women out there, there's no good men out there. And it's like, definitely. Well, you're saying that out loud, and so that's what you're drawing in, none of it.
Well, and I personally, as a straight male who has a lot of guy friends, I'm telling you, women out there,
you know, a lot of these.
Oh
women.
my God, these guys, like I would, if I was definitely, you know,
if you were single,
I would be all about, because it's just amazing people, like solid, and they say the same thing. They're like, man, there's just no good girls. I'm like, bro, like that's what they're saying about you.
Exactly.
Well, can you hook me up with any of these?
Exactly.
I was like, well, they live in a different time zone, but
well, and also there's just, and now we have Tinder and all these apps that make it, and it's not the app's fault, you know, it's the humans that are using them in this weird manipulative way, and it always comes back. I'm sure it always will come back to the word integrity on this show, but like, if you use a dating app with integrity, guess what you're going to draw in?
Yeah.
If you show up to your date and you're blisteringly honest instead of like pretending and wearing this mask, you're probably going to sort through the ones that don't fit with you really quickly and get to the ones that do really quickly. So decide what you want, you know?
Yeah, you have to, and that goes back to maybe writing down, playing this game with yourself and playing with your buddies. Like it's fun to do with others. Like, okay, you have 5 minutes, write down every step you would make. Yeah. Well, actually would be fun.
Write down the type of woman you
Can we do this though? This is, you know, I'm so genius.
You are.
Clearly, you know this, but I'm so smart that I came up with this all by myself. And that is this. Let's play this. I'm going to throw Mercedes under the bus here, because she's going to have a lot of work to do. Guys, come up take 5 minutes, time yourself. We're going to play the honesty game. Time yourself. We don't use stopwatches like that anymore. I do, but everybody hit the thing on your phone. And come up with how many steps can you come up with to date Mercedes, right? Like, hey, you know, and
that's your goal. And now I'm going to have stalkers showing up.
No, never mind. Her.
Like, here's what I would do. I'd first figure out what her address is. Then
what her address. Then I would show up in a trench coat. No, don't do that.
Do it with integrity.
But on our match social media or whatever it is, you know, it would be interesting to see, if you've worked on it, how many steps you can get to.
And I would say, instead of putting me at the end of that goal marker, I would put whatever they're projecting onto me, because you know,
whoever that is. It could be the girl on I usually use this anonymous woman, the cute girl on the third floor in accounting.
There you go.
It's the girl on the third floor in accounting, or on the, you know, in the apartment your buddy lives. It's like, whoever this is, because everybody's got somebody. Yeah. They have this, like, it would be cool if I could go out on a date with her.
Yeah, and I think the first thing would be writing down what the actual things about that woman, she could be a pure fantasy, like maybe she isn't even a physical being that you've encountered so far, but what are the actual things about her, you know, that you want? What is the goddess you want to call in? Like, what does her description look like? I don't know what that might be, but that's a huge piece.
Well, but you know, whoever everybody should at least have this idea of, you know, like when you're younger, what kind of car am I going to drive? Guys, you know, it was like, what kind of car are you going to drive? Oh, you know, I want to, you know, whatever it is.
I think I didn't do, though, in my dating life, was really draw it out and like create a list of what I would want in an ideal man. I don't think I did that till way later. And then in relationship, I was doing that, you know, and that's interesting, because sometimes you find out you don't want necessarily what you are with, but if you want to call that energy out of that person, it is possible at that point.
And it sounds like work, right? It sounds like this is what we're trying to alleviate here. Is it sounds like, oh, you have to, you know, journal every night. You got to go to see some, you know, psychologist or whatever. But that's not what all I'm trying to say is like this thing can be actually kind of fun to do.
Yeah, and it is work, though, to a degree. It's like it needs to be executed. Like, you like to think of things in that military mode a lot of the time, of like, how do we create a structure again? How do we step into our masculine energy and we create something that gets us where we want to go? It completes the mission.
Yeah, how do we accomplish what we've set out to accomplish, and without the mission creep of like getting distracted?
Yeah,
and sometimes the distraction's okay, but
and it's also, I think it is important to say the word work, because we're so allergic to it in our culture, but it's also the only thing that gets us anywhere. Like, the progress happens inside of the actual action. And so we're talking a lot about insight here, but you have to eventually choose action over insight, and you have to start. You have to begin, you know? So beginning might look like.
Yeah, and back to the guy. What if if you were going to design this guy that, and I don't mean, don't go out there and be like, oh, I'm all those and here's my phone number. Yeah. But the point is if you're in a position like Mercedes, of, you know, some level of stardom or some level of notoriety, okay, an attractive female that's around whomever all the time, whatever, what kind of guy would almost be a little more easily deployable as a dating partner to you? Like, I would just guess off the top of my head that if somebody is a kind of quote digital nomad or somebody that can work from any location, and he's just like, yeah, I'll tag along with you sometimes. I'll tag along, and then at least they get to know, look, we're not partying every night. I'm not going out with like we're not doing like, shots of tequila. This is professional stuff. I'm showing up, I'm interviewing people, I'm working with people. I go to bed at a time, and it's mainly these same, and then you're like, okay, well, this is really because the most horrific, thoughts or movies are the unknowns. It's the fear of the unknown. When I was a kid, I didn't like going into a deep water situation because I didn't know what was under. It scared the heck out of me. I didn't know what was down there because I couldn't see it. But as soon as I got scuba certified and I started going underwater, I was like, this is actually nothing.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Jaws wasn't
Mostly
lurking around.
nothing.
Yeah. But but at least you could see it. And then you turn back into the kind of the human hunter.
Yeah.
And now
clarity
you're like,
is everything. This. That's why when we're talking about doing work or laying out the steps, that's what you're doing, is figuring out, getting clear how you get there.
With what your partner is and what they do.
Then it's not scary and it's not overwhelming at all, And
you might meet some of your coworkers. They might meet, the really good looking prize fighter. I might meet him.
Yeah.
Here I am, a skinny guy, with a laptop, and I'm writing all day long. And, and then I go with her to a exotic locale, and I meet this guy who I'm like, oh my God, it's like Hercules. And then I realized, I was like, oh, he's so sweet.
Yeah.
And his wife's there, and his 4-year-old.
We're going to interview some of those guys.
I know we are. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Oh, all of our guys, right?
Yeah.
And it's like these, and then you learn, you're like, man, this guy's, I would die with this guy. Like, this guy's my buddy. And then you realize.
You're like, wait, why aren't you dating him?
Well, and there is someone in that has been in or is, I'm going to be anonymous about it, that I have known to engage with Mercedes. And this person, I love this person, and we will actively harass said supermodel here together. Okay, so
I did want to answer your question though, real quick, about what my ideal guy would look like if I was to list that out. And off the top of my head, it's really about having a growth mindset first and foremost, because obviously we got to get along on that, and I'm always trying to be better. And that's really a matter of like someone who plays the victim versus someone who's wanting to grow and figure out what the lesson is when hurtful things happen to you in your life. I actually heard this thing said about like you get to choose when something hurts you in life to either be wounded or grow, essentially. And that's really the option every time, is like, what is your lesson, or I'm going to sit here and be stuck and pity myself or something like that. So that would be a huge piece for me. And then I'd probably say needs to be generous and kind, and needs to have his own direction, and needs to have a strong group of male friends, because I think that's where so much of our therapy happens, is amongst our peers. And I actually came up with an acronym for this the other day, which I think is amazing myself, but I came up with myself.
It's sure to be genius.
It's sure to be genius, obviously.
Right.
But it's basically that a guy needs to keep this in mind, that he needs to have big dick energy. And DICK is the acronym. The acronym is direction, integrity, critical thinking, and be kind. So.
Well, and because to be kind also shows strength, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's being kind that comes with empathy. Like, it's kind of, that's what happens when we find empathy in ourselves for someone else, right? Is kindness. Kindness comes out of that. We can see that even when someone's an asshole, like hurt people. So when you see someone being an asshole, you go, oh, you're being an asshole. But then you go, well, you must be really in a bad space to be being that much of an asshole. And that empathy turns on kindness, where instead of you, I don't know, beating him up or something, you end up saying, hey, bro, like, what's going on? What can I help you with something? Because obviously creating more disconnection doesn't ever do, pouring fire on fire doesn't ever help, but finding a way to diffuse it or finding a way to help him through it or whatever that's the kindness that I think if we all were doing, we wouldn't have war.
Well, and your guy buddies, or if you're, well, just speaking of guys, if you have good guy buddies, but also if you have a girl buddy, but you're actually open up with them, over a cup of coffee, beer, whatever, and you just start talking a little bit, all they have to do is listen, because you'll start evaluating your own issue naturally, as also with them listening. But they'll tell you, like, if you have some good buddies and you can, if they really are friends with you, they'll be able to detect the stress in your voice and it's like, what's actually going on right
I think
now?
a big piece of that too, like what you're pointing to with having female friends, if you're a guy having female friends, how it sometimes feels a lot easier to open up and that type of thing and be vulnerable around women. Yeah, because being in that emotional state is a feminine energy trait, but it's also being able to do that with other men is what normalizes it, what makes it something that you're able to finally start feeling your feelings instead of numbing out and escaping your feelings constantly, which is literally the number one problem in our society today, is that we're not willing to feel stuff.
Right. For no matter what the emotion is.
Yeah, no matter what.
And so
unless it's pleasure.
Right.
And even then we're robbing ourselves, because if we can't feel pain to a degree, we can't feel pleasure to that same degree. So.
Well, you got to know, you've got to know what bad food tastes like in order to know what good food tastes like.
Exactly.
I'm very simplistic. All's going to come back to food. And so spicier the better. Unless it's dessert, then it has to be not real sweet. It's kind of sweet.
I was going to say that I think that one of the really tough places for guys in general, or like guys I've dated specifically, is it's not, the critical thinking. Like, you're probably going to have some conversations with me. You're going to be a critical thinker. You're hopefully traveling towards wholeness. So integrity is probably part of your journey. And I think it's part of everyone's journey anyway, as long as you're saying yes to it. Kindness, you're probably not going to even want to be around a person who's just not kind to you, right? But direction has been the hardest one in relationship with me, because I think I'm such a bulldozer a lot of the time. And that's like a major flaw in me in relationship, where I'm like taking the lead, I'm holding the direction, I'm the masculine one in the relationship, and like I'm moving forward with whatever direction I got going on, because I always have a direction for the most part. So it's really tough to either compete with that or have their own direction that I can't sway them off of. And I think direction for men in general is a struggle, I think, again, because of something we talked about on a different episode, but that idea of initiation is so much about figuring out direction, and finding what that is for you. And so much of that is figuring out what your purpose is here, which really comes down to figuring out what you actually feel good and capable doing. Like, what lights you up.
And also how, I keep saying also, but sorry, the interact, this was something, and there was something, I'll probably now use that. Yeah. There was something that I remember reading, or we were talking about, or something similar, where it was getting to know, I don't remember, I don't want to butcher it, and I don't even know who said it, so I'm sorry, but it has to do with, like, if you're on a date, okay, and let's say it's a first or second or third date, but before things get real, down the road. But even then, what are your thoughts when you're at a restaurant? Okay. And I don't mean you're just ordering at the counter. I just mean you're sitting down and there's a water person.
It's a more intimate situation.
Yeah, but there's certainly staff interaction. Are you paying attention? And I don't mean hyper-analyzing, but are you watching the interaction or receiving the interaction between your date and the staff manager, whoever at this location? Because I remember I was reading something that like somebody was very interested in that, and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? So in other words, you and your date are sitting in a restaurant, it's intimate, there's a candle, and the violin's playing off in the distance, whatever. And the interaction of your date, because all he's doing is putting his best foot forward on this first or second date to you. He's all, everything is great.
But then he's an asshole to the waiter.
Well, not only that, but it can not be an asshole. But what is your thoughts on the different levels of interaction? Like, because, and I guess what I'm saying is I was on a lunch with a friend of mine who's a female. Okay, and she's not from this country, and very good. We were very, very good buddies. And this was like our second lunch hangout with no motive other than we were friends. We knew each other's significant other, whatever. We're purely just friends, and we're sitting there, and she's all pretty, and we're talking about something, whatever, intellectual or whatever. And she was getting annoyed because the staff kept coming up and was like, "Oh, do you want this? You want that?" It was a female. She was getting annoyed. Finally, like, now in her culture, they don't like getting bugged by people. So she was just kind of like, I'm not going to do her accent because I'll give it away. But she's like, "Yes, we're good." Like, and the girl was like, "Okay." And I'm the opposite. I'm like, "Hey, I don't even know." I'm like all bubbly about it. But anyway, not about me. But you're sitting in this date, this format, whatever. How are you watching this, or do you even care? I mean, I'm sure you care.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about that?
I think you care to the degree that they treat other people kindly. But of course, if they just decide to spend the whole time talking to the waitress or something, yeah, it's probably competing with your date, but also it's just not being present with whatever that's and then you might just say like, "Hey, what are your intentions on this date? I'm totally cool with making this a social setting where we're including people. Like, let's drag other people in from the restaurant. I don't know, whatever it is, if you're open to that. Or, hey, I really intended for this date to be something where I get to know you better. Do you mind like being present here with me and interacting with me as the priority?" Or, I don't know.
Well, because that's why you went out on a date with them to begin with, because you want to get to know them better. Because there's clearly
but that's like the most terrifying thing ever to try to. That's the thing about, when we talk about being blisteringly honest on a first date, it's like almost impossible. But if someone was to do it and be able to be that vulnerable, because when you say like, "I need you to be more present with me," you're basically saying, "I'm needy in this situation," or that's, what your ego's saying. And you're not enough. And so you have to be able to say like, well, this is still a boundary. And if you don't feel enough in this situation, then maybe this isn't the right this isn't working out. And if I feel like I'm too needy by asking, then this probably isn't going to work out either. So
that's really, again, this is really a theme of what we're talking about. You're threading the needle.
Yeah.
And we're operating in that neutral gray area. And that's what's so confusing to everyone. And that's what we're trying to kind of somewhat demystify as much as we can, or at least as much as we know, because it's still mysterious to me. That's why I'm asking you. So, but as far as that goes, it's interesting because I think as a guy, I'm trying to think, if you're a guy who is of a high, you feel like you're a pretty smart guy, and your buddies have told you so, and you're somewhat successful, at least in whatever you do, and you meet a girl like Mercedes who you also think is pretty intelligent. You've got to know that her radar is pretty well tuned and will be able to pick up on if you're BSing her, right? To some degree.
I mean, again, integrity is the I in big dick energy. So you have to also be coming at it with being integral with what your intentions are. So if you're coming in to just manipulate somebody in a relationship, that's the energy you're getting back. So like, if someone comes in and they want to manipulate me, then I can either sit back and go, "Yeah, this isn't for me," and find my way out of the situation, or I can find a way that basically spins it back into, it just is going to happen that way. It's going to be spun back around into, well, what can I get out of this then? Or what can I get out of this then? Instead of it being a mutually beneficial relationship, where I think that's how all relationships really need to be, except for maybe like parent-child, where it's maybe more unconditional, right. But mutually beneficial in the way where, well, we're both coming to this with something and we're making an exchange, and that's where the connection happens. And the fear in us comes up whenever we feel like we don't have something that's mutually exchangeable, like we do not feel we have the worth to exchange with this other person's worth. What we see in them is like this worthy person, and we don't see that in us. Or we sometimes, when we get deeper into a relationship, we usually start projecting our lack of worth that we feel for ourselves on someone else and being like, "You don't have enough worth to be in this relationship." You find ways to blame them, and that's really just BS. It's really just that we all have worth. It's innate. It doesn't go away, but we don't all feel that we have the worth. We don't all we haven't integrated the fact that we have worth. So anyway.
And this gets back to we spoke about it in another episode, but this gets back to my, I'm kind of joking, but I'm not, but it gets back to my find your Greek or Slavic or pagan god and say, okay, is Aphrodite got my back today? I'm the guy, I pray to Aphrodite.
Or whatever.
Help me, or whatever, whoever it is. You're on my shoulder today, I'm going in. Or
have I done have I written out my list like we're
Yeah,
talking about
my
earlier?
list,
Do
yeah,
I know
right.
that, you know, I'm going into this prepared with clarity, and I know that this is what I'm looking for in a partner, and these are my hard no's, and I know the direction I want to go with my life is this. And so with that in mind, this is either going to fit or not, and I'm going to know really quickly, because your subconscious is doing like most of the work for you
Most of it,
anyway.
yeah, for
If
sure.
you can just slow down enough and listen to what your body's saying, it'll tell you straight up, like, this works, this doesn't work, go forward, don't go forward, you know, leave, evacuate the restaurant
Right.
immediately, or whatever is happening. So,
And if you want to really like go full bore with my whatever I'm talking about, but it's like maybe it is the whoever this
Yeah.
is whispering in your ear, and that's your subconscious.
That's your-
but you call her Aphrodite or
Right.
whatever,
Whoever you
and
need to call
she's
her.
like, just so you know,
Or him.
and you might not know,
Yeah.
this is happening, but indeed in your psyche it is.
it's the discerning factor.
And the thing about that is, right, is if you're at this, again, you're at this restaurant. I mean, I guess that's where typically dates or coffee. I like that whole idea of you go to a coffee shop and you're just hanging out. Nobody's drinking and you're just kind of getting to know somebody. And that's
Yeah.
or you meet them in another setting.
Yeah.
You met them on
I like hikes.
hikes.
Yeah,
oh yeah,
like
that's
hike.
good.
But don't go
Well,
on like
yeah,
a
that's-
super rural hike.
right.
Go on one that's highly trafficked.
Well, and where you're and in the area of maybe
Yeah, there's hikes
California, there's a
everywhere.
lot more.
Yeah.
Whereas in certain areas of the country, it's
True.
like, especially like where one of our guests is from, you might not see another human for
Yeah.
like about 800
Oh my
miles
gosh,
or
yeah,
something.
you're right.
So or going out on a boat, that is usually,
Yeah.
I've heard some absolute. So I guess what I'm getting at is, if you're a guy, don't go ask the girl, hey, do you want to go on my, and like you've never been on a date with her.
Yeah.
And you say, hey, do you want to go on my boat this weekend? If you said, hey, do you want to come on my boat and bring your sister or your brother or or our friend?
Make
you know,
it
Matilda.
something that feels safe.
It's like, I'm
Super
going
important.
anyway, and there's going to be other people, so don't worry. And we're only going to stay in this area, but I get it if you, or just don't even do that. Maybe figure out another way to like.
I think
get that
safety, this is like a question I get asked a lot on OnlyFans, which is like how to go in for the first kiss or like make a move on someone you're dating who's new to you. And I think it really always is about creating a safe place for that person to land with you. So like, and that, I mean, I'm going to say this probably so much on this show, but it's always about slowing down. And especially for men, it's always about slowing down enough to see what's going on in that moment inside of them. Because if they are on a first date, for instance, and they're having this conversation with this girl, maybe it's me, right? And we're having this conversation and it's getting into a place where it seems like, oh, it's getting a little quiet. Like this might be a moment where I move in, or like I get it, I don't know, put my hand on her knee or something that becomes more intimate, or maybe even a first kiss or something. If you're not watching, you know, where your heart rate is, like where your breath, are you breathing more rapidly or something like that? If you're not watching the things that are happening inside your body, you're literally just guiding her, because she's naturally, especially she's a feminine bodied being, she's naturally going to be following your lead. So if your direction is being hyperventilating and nervous and clammy and all those things because of whatever anxiety and thought pattern you have going on in your head, she's going to be still in that space of that's not safe. Like your eyes are darting around. You're not making, you know, solid eye contact with her. You don't feel like a safe place. You feel like you don't have a foundation. You're not like settled, you know, you're kind of up in the air still. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to probably hold this down until you fucking attach yourself to the ground, bro. And then when you finally do, or if you do, then she can be like, oh, cool. Okay. Like you're a safer place. I can come in closer. And she will gravitate to you in that situation. But for men to have that awareness, you have to create the skill. I mean, like it is a practiced skill in everyday life. And that's in all relationships, whether romantic or otherwise, of like noticing where your breath is, noticing what your body's doing and trying to tell you, and that intuitive voice, you know. And then that takes the slowing down process. And then it also takes like maybe a breathing practice or something, you know, something that gets them to a place where they're like, okay, I feel settled. My nervous system isn't on, you know, going haywire. It's settled. It's calm. And I know how to get myself back down there. In the middle of the first date, if you can get yourself back to calm pretty quickly, she's going to be into it. I promise you.
Well, and the question is why is that? That's because if you're calm and you're the guy, okay, and you're calm, it shows a confidence, and you don't really understand this till you're a little bit older, right? But confidence is important because you're showing that you can help build the fortress or the nest or the palace.
You can handle it.
You can handle life with this person. Yeah. And in other words, not only
just
handle
life.
Well, just life. Correct. Not really with this person, just life. Now, as a takeaway, and we're not wrapping up, but I'm just saying as a takeaway, one of these, because I want to have these deployable things that we can resource. But as a takeaway, it is when in doubt, just slow down, right? Because what's the hurry? Like, exactly. By the fourth date, I know a woman who she's like, well, we're starting to get into the area where this has been going on too long. Like it hasn't occurred yet. But honestly, that's a long time. This isn't like date 4.
Yeah.
Okay. This is like month 8. Okay. So like your area of your temporal opportunity zone is a lot longer. Right? If I'm a guy and I know I really want to I
think the science of getting you out of the friend zone is the exact same science as I'm talking about here, where if you have the ability to it's basically self-mastery, it's really, and that's a big word because that takes a whole lifetime, but just the basics really will get you to a place where you're able to know yourself, which is really what self-confidence is, knowing oneself, to a place where you are just exuding this groundedness, this presence. And presence is the antithesis of anxiety, right? Because anxiety is like, I'm in the future, I'm worried about what's going to happen way out there. And instead, you're staying present, what's happening here. And I think one of the easiest strategies for that, to make it actionable, is to be in gratitude. So like if you're sitting across from a beautiful woman that you're on a date with, you're so excited about that, and that's what's causing the anxiety because you don't want to do something wrong. You don't want to be, piss her off or lose the date, whatever your reasons are. You don't want to seem not enough or feel not enough. Then figuring out what are you grateful for in this moment. Well, I'm really grateful that I'm here sitting here with this woman. I'm really grateful we're going to have an amazing meal. I showed up to this date. I didn't let my nerves overtake me. I got to wear this shirt that I've been wanting to wear for, I don't know what your list is. Yeah. But all of a sudden, now you're here instead of all the way out there, which is not safe for her, No,
and that's it. And kind of as a fun thing is pretend you're sitting there with this beautiful woman who's like what you want, okay? And you're sitting across from a first date and you're nervous, whatever. Pretend for a moment, and you got to think of it now. Don't think of it when you're there, but pretend for a moment you're texting your buddies, Mercedes and the chap, and you're saying, look at this picture of me and her at this beautiful restaurant or wherever we are on the beach, whatever, coffee shop, whatever, and look at this. And what we're going to text you back is like, damn, dude.
Good,
nice work. And just that alone is, why is she there? Because you're freaking awesome. Something you did, something you're doing is awesome, because I'm telling you, she's not going to go.
No, she's there with you.
She's there for a reason, man.
You're already got, your foot in the door.
Foot is in the door. So with that, I wanted to ask you, I wanted to ask a couple real quick questions. Are there perfect, not perfect people, but is there, we asked about this ideal guy. Use a deployable thing, and I don't mean, insert famous person X. Mm-hmm. I'm saying just three things of hard and fast, boom, boom, boom. I don't know, making this up. Don't be a mama's boy. I don't know. And have a tan. That's not that. But what are 3 things that are, that we know that we just gotta have?
I think it's slow down.
Yeah.
Notice what's going on inside yourself. Be willing to feel your feelings, because that's what that all is. That's one point, right? That all happens at the same time. And breathe.
Yeah.
Breathe is number 2. And then number 3 is speak beauty. Be willing to speak beauty. It's maybe the most vulnerable thing you can do in the presence of another person, is say what you see as beautiful in them. It doesn't have to be physical beauty. But being willing to give those words of affirmation is like healing to anybody who is willing to receive it. So if you can say it, it's scary as hell because it puts you in a vulnerable state.
Right.
But that's really it.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right.
For all relationships, romantic or otherwise.
I love it. Well, okay, now let's get into the technical part of our program. Where can you find it? What are we doing?
What are we doing?
Right.
Well, this was fun, but it's really just a matter of you guys taking this information, I hope, and using it for the best life moving forward. And so I hope that's what you're doing. So thank you guys so much for being here with us, as always. And if you want to connect with us and be a part of our community, please subscribe, comment below, click all the links. And we will have a show every week. So catch us again next week. Until then, bye for now.
Bye.